In this video, we're going to take a look at our player settings. These can be found underneath Edit, underneath Project Settings, and down to the player. Now, the player settings in general are the settings that will be set up by default if you were to build out this game. Now, starting at the very top, we have some things we can set up, like what's our company name, what's the product name, like the actual name of our game, any default icon that our company might have. Now, that's something that is going to be for Pro only. If you're using Unity Basic, it's always going to be the Unity logo, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, you have some per platform settings here. There's really only two categories you need to worry about. We have settings for the web player and settings for the PC and Mac standalone player. Any other settings are outside the scope of our discussion. So let's start over here just taking a look at the general web player settings. The first category we have is resolution and presentation. Settings in here are pretty straightforward. What default screen width and height do you want people to see when they access this game on the web?
Whether or not you want the game to still be running in the background if you move your player and it's no longer focused in your browser.
It's like, yeah, if you brought up another window while you were browsing.
If the game's going to keep playing or not.
What do you want the web page to look like? This will create a template for your game. Would you like to have a black background, the default background, or the no context menu background? You can establish whether or not to display the watermark. Now, I believe that's also a pro feature. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
if you're using Unity Basic, I think you're always going to get the watermark.
Yep, and that's the Unity's watermark in the lower corner.
That's right. Now, down from here, we can set up the icon, which is not going to be applicable for this platform. So a lot of these are just kind of standard categories. Same thing with Splash. Then we have some other settings as well. Now, these are some kind of technical settings that have more to do with rendering. What rendering path we're going to use. We're going to use vertex lit, forward, or deferred lighting, which is Pro only. Now, static batching, what is that going to do?
Static batching is whether or not it's going to take all the objects that you've got that are flagged as static and try to combine them into a mesh and simplify the geometry. It's a performance optimization trick.
As opposed to dynamic batching?
Dynamic batching is batching for objects that aren't static. Things that are
moving around in the scene?
Yeah, not flagged as static, possibly moving. It's just going to try to compress things down as tight as they can and simplify the number of draw calls that are being made.
And down from here we have streaming, which this controls an index to whatever level is going to contain all of the assets for a game for having those streamed in. Now, level streaming is not something we're going to be talking about here in this discussion. Now, our API compatibility level is grayed out, so let's jump over to our settings for the PC and Mac standalone, jumping all the way back up to the top. With resolution and presentation, again, we have some pretty standard stuff. What's our default screen width and height going to be? Now, again, these are defaults. When you open up the PC or Mac standalone, you generally get a settings window that allows you to set up your resolution.
Right, but we can turn that off, which is why we have defaults. So if we decide to turn off whether or not you can change resolution, this will specify the resolution the game's going to run in.
That's right. And just like before, we have the ability to control whether or not this will run in the background. If the default is full screen, the capture single screen. Now, what is that going to do for us?
Well, capture single screen is there to determine whether or not it's going to darken out other monitors that may be attached to your computer if you're using a multi-monitor setup.
And then, of course, we have whether or not we want to display the resolution dialog. So is it enabled, disabled, or hidden by default, which means the person could bring it up if they really needed to see
Right, you
it.
would actually start your game, and then you would hold the Alt key down, and that would bring up the change resolution screen.
We can control what aspect ratios are going to be supported in our game. We can take a look at the dashboard widget options.
That's more for Mac.
Right. That's not something that's going to affect us if we're here on a Windows platform. We can control whether or not we want the watermark to display. Now, for our icon, we can control the various resolutions of our icon. So if we need a small icon, large icon, all the way up to the super high-res version, we can override those and establish each level. We have a splash image we can put up, so when the game first starts, we can fade up our own custom splash image. Again, I believe this is Pro only.
I believe you're right.
Yeah, because if you're still using Unity Basic, you're going to get the Unity splash, and that's just kind of how it works. And then, just like we had with the web player, we can control the rendering path. If we want to use vertex lit, forward lit, or the Pro only deferred lighting. We have static batching and dynamic batching, and we can also choose the API compatibility level. Now, what's this going to do for us?
Well, this actually changes the level of what version of .NET we are actually using. So this is, again, a scripting feature if you're using C# scripts.
Gotcha. So that's a quick look at the various settings we have. Again, the entire player settings window is really about what your end result is going to be like if you were to build this out for Mac, PC, or for the web. But that's going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.